Hour here on Curious Sports Pulse. My name is Gabriel. We are the number one show who say that they will last an hour and it will be closer to 30 minutes. Yeah, 25, 30 minutes. That's about what we're aiming for here. But a lot to get to today. So we have the Minnesota Timberwolves find life. They extend the series. Caitlin Clark goes off for 30. But I think we are seeing now very clearly that there's a little bit of a learning curve. Want to touch on Angel Reese and how the Chicago Sky did in their game. But first, Bronny James. I don't understand what Rich Paul is doing and why they're going about things the way that they are doing things. And here's what I mean. Uh, Not too many people, and I'm stuttering, just trying to even come up with a way to express this. Not too many people believe that Bronny James at this point is ready. And now I've been on the record as saying that's fine. You don't have to necessarily be ready yet. It's okay knowing that you're a prospect, knowing that your time will come. It's okay to have all of this, have the reasonable expectation be that, your time will come in the league. That you have a lot to work on, you have some holes in your game, but that whether it's in college or whether you do end up making a successful jump pro, that there will be a learning curve. There are additional steps to take. That just making it right is far from a done deal. Now that can all be true, and at the same time, I do not understand why Rich Paul is saying what he's saying, and the time more importantly, the timing of what he's saying is what I don't understand. So earlier it was known that, or at the very least it was publicized, you know, nothing officially official, I suppose, but so far to my knowledge no one has disputed this and no one has said that anything is crazy that's being reported out there or anything like that. So far it's being known, it's been said that Bronny James and Rich Paul. And at this point, I'm assuming that everything in regards to this is through Rich Paul at the moment. That they had about 10 workouts lined up with various teams, and that they canceled all of them except for the Lakers and Phoenix Suns. And now we get a more recent announcement than that how many times can we say that in a sentence? That Bronny James will in fact be staying eligible for the NBA draft and that he will not be going back to college. Yeah, that wasn't a concern really of anyone's. No one was too worried if Bronny James was or was not going to uh, make a last second switch and go back to USC or enter the transfer portal and go to, I don't know, Arkansas, for example. No one was too worried about that. And in terms of how people view him as a pro prospect, that is more or less sealed. That's more or less set in stone. So even if he were to go back for another year, the pendulum wouldn't swing too far in either direction. And so this is, I suppose, where I'm confused is A, why these specific moves, and but more importantly, the timing of the moves. So is it possible that the mindset here is simply any good news is good news, or any news is good news, pardon me. I suppose like we're trying to keep his name out there. That could be the angle. I doubt it because Rich Paul is, say whatever you want. He is very good at his job. He's very good at positioning. I think it's them using the leverage that they have legitimately built up and just adding a little pressure to the situation to let teams know who has the leverage. Because let's be real, and this has less to do with Bronny James and who his father is. This honestly has less to do with that, and I'll explain that in a moment. This take has less to do with that and more to do with this is Rich Paul exercising all of the weight and all of the credibility and all of the power that he has within this space. What and now you're going to tell me, well, that's because, Brian James is the son of LeBron. Well, fine. All right, checkmate. You got me there, I guess. But either way, the point stands that if this wasn't someone connected to Rich Paul specifically, if this wasn't someone connected to LeBron James, the draft prospects of Bronny would be, well, he's going to be an undrafted rookie free agent, and he's going to have to go through the G League route, or at the very least, really have a hell of a summer league campaign. Right? That's what we would be expecting. Oh, and then once and then even further down the road, the conversation would be, well, can he be a good role player? Can he be a serviceable bench producer? That's really what the conversation would be if he didn't have the support of Clutch Sports behind him right now. And that's fine. That's fine. Right? I mean, Clutch Sports has the support or supported Ben Simmons when he probably wasn't as deserving. And so that's part of any agent, that's part of any agency's job is to put your client in the best possible position, make them look as good as possible. That's your job as someone who's in this space, who's operating in this space, who's representing a client or a player who has either aspirations to get onto a better team, who has aspirations to get a larger contract, or who has aspirations to make it to the next level. But to a certain degree, even if they are making it clear, even if this was the case that no way in hell is Bronny James going to play for any G League team, fine, I could live with that. But I don't like this being public, and again, I hate the timing of it because the whole narrative against Bronny is that he's only getting this because of his father, and that's unfair. That's not accurate at all. But these specific announcements aren't helping. And ultimately, all of this is moot. All of this isn't going none of this is really going to matter. Why? Because it'll take about 5 minutes on the court, and everyone in the building is going to know if Bronny James belongs or not. So, really, it doesn't matter too much in terms of the pre-draft hype, what happens directly after the draft. All of that more or less doesn't matter because the professional leagues and really anytime you go up a level in competition, you get exposed or you showcase that you belong very quickly. So this is why maybe we shouldn't be too concerned about this, but either way, the point stands is that the timing of what Rich Paul is saying, specifically this the message of Bronny James isn't going to explore every option or there isn't a need for Bronny James to explore every option isn't helping the narrative that is right now being painted against him. And I think it's doing a disservice. Again, if the result's the same, if truly they were never going to have him sign with a G League affiliate or Ignite team equivalent or whatever the case may be, right? If they're basically saying we don't want him playing for the main lobsters or the main red claws, if that's what they're basically saying, fine. If that's how it ended up actually playing out, but I don't like that it's public, and I don't like that they're coming out so soon ahead of it. And again, Rich Paul is kind of betting on the fact that he has enough influence and leverage where this is the power move that he can get ahead of the narrative. And so he's letting teams know, I guess. But I think this is one slight miscalculation. Again, the result could have been the same, but I don't love the timing, and I don't love the message that this is sending necessarily for Bronny, or not for Bronny James, but for potential and future teammates. But moving on, Angel Reese. I mean, come on, she's a lot of fun to watch, and again, when we talk here about the WNBA, I kind of want to stick strictly to basketball. So they lost last night 68-77 to the Seattle Storm. And I think we're seeing now that this is a team that they're probably going to be around hovering around 500 toward the beginning of this season. I think they're going to improve. I think they're going to get better. So, but finishing around 500, I think is appropriate for the Chicago Sky team. Either way, and we're going to speak more in a moment on what I mean by there's an over reliance, and success is almost measured by how you do as a 3-point shooter. And we saw that on full display last night with Karl-Anthony Towns and Caitlin Clark, and we'll discuss that in a moment. But speaking of someone who is hedging their performance, not based solely on their shooting and how they shoot on any given night. So Angel Reese finishes with 11 points, 3 assists, 2 steals. 12 rebounds, must be said. Six on the offensive board. But most importantly to me, 0 3 points attempted. And of course that maybe that's not the big shock, or that's not shocking. I mean, pardon me, misspoke there. That's not shocking by any chance. 0 3 points attempted, but I love it. She's playing to her strength. She's playing well, and like I've said, this team is very supportive of her. Almost unites in their support and feeds off of the energy of Angel Reese. And anytime she scored, they said this on the broadcast last night, the crowd will go wild. The crowd will erupt. And so it's just a fun story to watch. And as a front court player, I've said this multiple times, the transition is just simply going to be easier when you jump up a level versus a guard. And so overall, there were a couple sloppy turnovers at the end, but this was a game that really could have gone either way. I mean, I know the final score shows that it was a 9-point game, but it was like a 3 to 4 point game late, and there was just a costly turnover there. It could have, and they were coming back, so it really wasn't as bad as the score indicated. I think this Chicago Sky team is going to be overall fine, especially when they play against some of the lesser teams in the WNBA. And I think they'll, on any given night, they'll be able to steal one occasionally against a significantly better side. And I say all of that with the caveat of for now, because I think long term, this Chicago Sky team is going to be in those conversations of being not only some of the better teams, but also potential teams who we talk about. Okay, this team can make a playoff push. But shout out yesterday to the Chicago Sky, not just Angel Reese, but really everyone on there. Mariana Mabry is someone who's fun to watch. I like watching her play. And then her teammates really galvanizing around her. Who's another person that stood out to me? Elizabeth Williams, what she's doing down low. And really, I think a good person for Angel Reese to learn from as she continues to develop into a WNBA player. But moving on, we have how did Caitlin Clark do? Not bad. Not bad, obviously. I mean, you hear me say not bad, and that's kind of a no duh statement. Why? Because they played the Los Angeles Sparks, and she finishes pardon me, and she finishes with 35 and 6. So yeah, obviously she had a good individual game. But it must be said, Indiana Fever 1-7 on the year, Los Angeles Sparks now 2-4 on the year. And so two things. First, we're going to focus on the Los Angeles Sparks side. This is a team that needs Cameron Brink out there, and I think Cameron Brink is largely going to be fine. One thing that I'd like to see her work on and get better at immediately is anticipation and general on court awareness, especially on the defensive end. And why do I say that? There are times where she's out of position, and maybe it's her length, and maybe it's her adjusting to the tempo of the WNBA, but she's picking up a couple of unnecessary fouls to me. And so that'll limit her playing time, obviously. And more importantly, even when it's not a foul call, she's out of position on a couple times where you can see if she is just a half step sooner to the given spot where she's trying to get at, then her length alone is going to deter a lot of shots. Her presence, like not quite to the level of Victor Wembanyama, but you get what I'm saying here. Like she has the reputation, she has the natural length, and so just a couple times, it's like, ooh, you see that she knew what she wanted to do. You see that she tried getting there, but just like I said, just that half step too late. And that's something, luckily, that's something really, fixable, just anticipation, being in the same scenarios a couple different times, going over it in film, and just saying, "Okay, so when this happens, I need to step here now and anticipate that sooner." That's all. But whenever she left the court, she being Cameron Brink, in my opinion, there was something of a feeling of, this isn't gonna end well." Um, particularly down low. And, Mr. who is this now? Mr. Arlozin with 2 N's. Appreciate you reaching out. Yeah, message us on Discord at Sports Pulse or at Curious Sports Pulse, or it's not at Curious Sports Pulse on Discord, and we'll happily chat on Mr. RLOZINN. But anyway, back to the point. So I think Cameron Brink is largely going to be fine. What isn't fine is how Caitlin Clark is playing, in my opinion. So yeah, she finished with 30 points. But what's the number that I hate? 10 threes attempted. She finished 3 of 10 from 3 and 7 of 16 overall. So I know that this isn't necessarily fair, but let's play this game. What happens if you take all of her 3-point attempts away? So then she finishes 4 of 6 from the field. And it's not that she can't make those shots. Of course she can. But particularly if you're a young aspiring basketball player, and we're gonna get to someone like Karl-Anthony Towns, especially who's apparently taking 2,000 plus shots a day or an hour. I forget what she said. Um, your over reliance on the three and your willingness to take threes because you know you can make them isn't conducive to winning basketball long term. So in a vacuum, in a one-off game, sure, you know, I'm okay. I'm a huge believer in ride the hot hand myself. But you can be for you, even if you are a great shooter, you can't force it. And even if you are the hot hand, you have to concede then, okay, my taking of a bajillion shots isn't going to allow others to get in a rhythm. And so, case in point, she finishes 3 of 10. She being Caitlin Clark finishes 3 of 10 from three. That's just 3 points of 3-pointers attempted. Now, we have Kelsey Mitchell. She finishes 5 of 15 from the field, 3 of 7 from three. The next closest players are Wallace and Boston with 9 shot attempts, period. And then we have someone with 5, 4, 3, 3, and 4. So this is what I'm saying is that, and we're seeing how it's also playing out so far. Like there are times where she can play well and where she has really nicely timed threes. Fine. But we see that this is probably the single toughest path. This is probably the single toughest road to winning basketball at this level, which is, hey, let's hope Caitlin Clark stays hot from three. And for sure, that's not going to be sustainable over the course of the regular season. And for sure, that's not going to be sustainable over the course of the playoffs when it gets to that. So, what made Steph Curry and Klay Thompson so lethal was not that they made and took so many threes, but that they did so within the flow of an offense. And that truly anyone anyone who was on the court at the time had to be ready because they knew that the ball would come their way and that the gravity of Thompson, the gravity of Curry would allow them to have open looks at the very least, whether they made them or not. So now fast forward. So now back to the discussion of 3-point shooting. Too many shooters think that they are good 3-point shooters, and too many shooters have that try to have that be the staple when they aren't good shooters from 12 feet away. When they aren't good, um, when they aren't good enough, consistent free throw shooters. All right, so the great shooters they worked on their form tirelessly, and they would extend their range as they got more comfortable. And so when Karl-Anthony Towns, I don't care that the Minnesota Timberwolves got the win last night. When Karl-Anthony Towns now is almost proud that he's putting up, and to be clear, he did say 1,500 shots. I was just being silly and over exaggerating earlier. But either way, when he now says this, it shows that his mindset, for me at least, isn't in the right place. So yeah, he attacked the paint better, and that's when they found their most success. He got hot from three late in the fourth. I'm going to bet anything I have and everything I have that he's not shooting 80% from three over the course of the series in another game. And then holding him to the same standard as I am everyone else. So to be fair, I don't love Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic how they kind of went away from the two-man game attacking the paint. They finished 1 of 6 from 3 and 4 of 11 from 3. Now, this Dallas team is best when one of those two are going downhill and they either kick out to an open shooter or it opens up enough for a lob. Now, that's when they're at their best. So, in my opinion, Doncic and Irving settled a little too much last night. And the Timberwolves got bailed out by, and now credit where it's due, Karl-Anthony Towns did hit 3 very critical clutch threes late. But for you to think, or for this team to think that something's unlocked and that they figured it out, I it's almost worse that they now won this game because they in their minds, and you can tell by the post game, it's like, okay, yeah, we found it now. Here's the recipe for success for this Timberwolves team if they are going to eventually hope to force a game seven. Is Anthony Edwards just needs to be spectacular. He was. Check. And then either Towns or Gobert needs to have a special offensive night. And so for yesterday, it was Towns. Again, he hit those 3 very critical threes late. And then they need production from one of the other role players and or off the bench, a la most times they're going to consider Naz Reid. But either way, I don't love that they were in the game and they had the lead because Gobert and Towns were more aggressive. They were attacking the paint, and that's where they found success. So can Caitlin Clark, can Karl-Anthony Towns, can anyone make threes, contested threes? Yes. But instead of you thinking, okay, this is how I'm going to win games, what you should do is say, wow, I took a bad shot. Thank God it went in. And then how do you balance that with the heat check? Okay, I'm okay with trying it again. So again, this isn't why I'm crucifying Carl Anthony Towns for making those threes late in the game. Right? He was hot. Fine. I'm okay, but you can't now overreact and say, well, the Timberwolves found a way. Oh, Karl Anthony Towns hit some really tough shots from range that he probably, unless the first couple are falling, he probably shouldn't be taking those. Caitlin Clark, I'd like to see. I've been saying this. I'd like to see her get her teammates a little more involved. And there are times where, let's be honest, she's just rushing the 3-point attempt. Can she make those? Yes. Towns make those? Yes. Can anyone make those? Yeah. But that's not sustainable winning basketball. That's all the time we have for today. Tune in 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as we have our afternoon show. Until then, everyone, enjoy the rest of your